I forgot to mention that Dipak is a former minister.
Was. Former. Thank you. Ajay has given you the background. I'm going to get into the institutions and the larger issues of why we are in the mess we are in. Not just Bagmati, but Sabarmati and Yamuna and Gomati, and you name all of them. All our rivers in major cities have become sewers, despite the fact that they enjoy a holy status. So there's a need to seriously rethink, and it's not going to be easy. I'm going to start with a mantra that we have, some of us, been talking about, and I'll explain that mantra along the way. And the mantra is wicked problems, uncomfortable knowledge, clumsy solutions. Wicked problems. The problem of water pollution in our river bodies in urban areas is a wicked problem. These are problems that cannot even properly be defined. You think you have defined it, and you start unpacking it, and you find like a nest of vipers, more intractable problems within each one of those definitions inside. You think this Bagmati water problem is a pollution problem, so you approach it as a chemistry problem and you try to solve it, and you suddenly find out it's a legal problem with municipalities, it's a land issue, it's encroachment issues, it's every one of them has some major institutional failure somewhere along disciplines that have nothing to do from where you started. It makes it a very wicked problem, and wicked problems cannot be solved by the comfortable knowledge that we are all taught in universities. It seems to demand some very uncomfortable knowledge. The question comes, who generates that uncomfortable knowledge? How is it generated? And what does it lead to? We call it clumsy solutions, but I'll get to that. Ajay talked about the Pokhrel Commission I was a member of in 1986. What had happened was, when the World Bank entered in the early 70s in the water supply sector in Nepal, the water supply, urban water supply sector did not have foreign aid at that point. But King Birendra had just ascended the throne, and his coronation was down the corner in 1975 was his coronation. And they were looking for money to beautify the city, as all kinds of heads of states would be coming for the coronation. And somebody suggested that there's this outfit called the World Bank, and they have tons of money. And that's how it all started. And it started with what's known as the first water supply project in around 1973, World Bank project. It eventually expanded over a period of 12 years into three major projects, Project 1, 2, and 3, which covered 12 major cities of Kathmandu, where the idea was, A, water supply would be improved so that you had 24-hour water supply, and sewerage would be built, Bagmati River would be clean. Now this is 1973 first water supply project. Three major projects 12 years down the road, and water supply was far from 24 hours, was shrinking every day into few hours of supply. Bagmati started, far from being cleaner, became even more of a sewer. And there was a lot of problems. And the government was under pressure from the World Bank, because the World Bank has only one solution to all the problems in the world, which is to raise tariff. Now, when you haven't provided service, how do you publicly raise tariff? And this is something every politician faces everywhere in the world. So they found the easy solution, which they thought was an easy solution. They made this commission headed by a member of parliament, Mr. Pokhrel. He passed away just about a couple of months back. He was one of the first engineers of the Department of Roads who designed the East-West Highway in Nepal. Has been working on many other things. And I was a member of that commission. And what we did was, we really went into this whole issue with with absolute gusto, and we were aghast at what we found. What was amazing was, this is not your everyday kind of mess up in some department. Here was a World Bank funded project with consultants from America and France and you name it. I mean, every major country had consultants over there. And you look for the basic numbers and you don't see them, which is how much water is being produced to supply to the water supply system. No number. Say, well, so what are you supplying? Then you say, what have you sold? And you find out there are meters, but there's no reading. The meter reading system had collapsed in between because of institutional nature. That's the second part we looked at. And we looked at and said there's 70, an average of something like 70% loss in the system as a whole. Now, if you have a 70% leaking system, you can add, any new project in there and it's still going to leak 70%. So this was so fundamental a question that we had to ask this World Bank economist. We said, in fact, I had to ask him, I said, where the hell did you learn your economics? Now, in the institutional side, when we looked at it, what we found out was, and this is not just in Nepal, but every country which has got its whole system donor-led and donor-driven, the first casualty is our institutions. Institutions that really drive the process, the ownership by institutions, they all get missing. And this sector was no exception. First of all, there was an overriding of the old institution. Ajay showed that picture of that Rana Palace built, the Fora Darbar. Okay. Whatever it was, there was something called the Pani Goswara. That was the system that was handling the water supply system. When the World Bank project came along, what they did was they bypassed this system completely and built a new water supply board first and a corporation. Okay. So you had two parallel systems running, one well-funded World Bank system with engineers and vehicles and Pajeros and all driving. We didn't have Pajeros those days, it was Toyotas, I think. Huh? Yeah. And that, and then you had the old system of actual people who actually knew where the pipes were. I remember walking with one of them who had served 44 years in that department and didn't know where his pension was going to come because another outfit had been set up. And I remember walking with him all the way from north of Kathmandu trying to find out where the pipes were. And these were the only guys who had it in their head. So you brought in a new project, new system, overriding the old system and creating a mess in the process. Sewerage was an even bigger problem. It was the forgotten end of the business. Everybody concentrated on getting the water supply, forgetting that after it's used, something has to happen to it. It's got to go somewhere. The sewerage system, we had two parallel systems going. There was the municipal system, which didn't know where it was going. I mean, since, you have all these guys, funny guys from World Bank saying they want to connect here, they want to dig up here. What do you do with these guys? So I know a mayor we interviewed at that point. He said, listen, am I going to stop them? Well, technically he should have. But he says, I'll be branded anti-developmental if I stop them. So he said, okay, go dig, do whatever you want, but at the end tell us where you did dig and what kind of sewerage and where you made connections. None of that was handed over to the municipalities. On the contrary, all this got eventually when the old system died or was strangulated, the new one was sort of imposed and nobody knew what was going on where the pipes were, where the sewers were, and who owns it and who is responsible for it. Okay? Which is the municipality or is it this new World Bank created outfit? So this is what the mess was, and we argued in the Pokhral Commission. We made a set of recommendations which went so much against the grain that the World Bank spent about 10 years trying to get it suppressed, and when finally, and did do it all kinds of things, and when finally they could not, they moved out of the sector. And guess what happens when one donor moves out of the sector? Another one jumps in. So the Asian Development Bank jumped in and they're in a mess right now, equally with their Melamchi project. But this is where the story is even now. And these are big amounts of money that no system can deny, but then nobody wants to concentrate on the real part of the problem. Now, what has happened since Pokhral Commission? Well, with this donor competition, there has been a couple of things. First of all, because of the conflict also, partly the Maoist insurgency and all, the population of Kathmandu Valley has increased in these last about 2 decades by about 5 times. Now, a system that's designed for something else, now you have 5 times increase in population, of course it's going to be in a mess. Okay. Surprising that it still functions, or something still functions. There has been no new addition of new supplies. There has been all kinds of private sector functioning with tankers and bottled waters and all that going on. But the municipal system is in a mess. The 70% leakage is just as bad. And there has been no attempt to control the loss or do anything with it because the institution is not designed for it. The institution is designed, and I can tell you comical stories, on this, is designed to disburse foreign aid. So there had been a case when in the parliament they asked questions once, then parliament said, how is it that, there's no water in anybody's house, everybody is complaining that we don't have water. And this institution, the Water Supply Corporation, says that their progress is 90%. Now 90% progress for any government corporation is pretty good. Until somebody began to deconstruct and found out that if they open an LC, letter of credit for importing some pipes or something like that, that's almost 90% of the total budget. So that's how progress was measured. How much money do you disperse, how fast? Okay. The other stuff was that because you've created a construction-oriented outfit designed to disburse foreign aid and not water management per se, looking at problems of what a consumer is suffering at the distribution end, they ended up with designing and promoting projects, and right now the whole system is stuck with one single project called the Melamchi project. And the hype behind this is once Melamchi comes, there'll be enough water to wash the streets of Kathmandu, and everybody can have a swimming pool in their backyard. Okay. The trouble is, Ajay and I, we calculated that between the two of us, we've spent, 45, 50 years almost now, 25 years each, saying this is not going to work, and it hasn't worked. And it looks like the last figure, they have started tunneling, and there's this Chinese contractor who has not been paid. And the last figure that came out was, this is a 30-kilometer tunnel in the Himalaya. Can you imagine? It's a big tunnel anywhere in the world. But within Himalayan geology, 30 kilometers is a mess. They've started tunneling. Madhav Nepal was the Prime Minister, and he was in a rush to inaugurate something and put his name on the plaque. The tunneling rate, at the current rate of tunneling, it will take 276 years to complete that tunnel. So, I don't know when we're going to get the water. There's this fixation that one big project will solve all the problem, when the real problem is somewhere else at the distribution end, the leaking pipes, the fact that nobody knows where the pipes are, the meters don't function, and there's a whole lot of stories. What this does is now we have to ask questions, and there are not many people doing that. But one of the things that we are asking is, and I'm part of a group that asks this question, we call ourselves CFG group, which is cities as a force of good. Now, we have heard of cities and urban slums and urban mess and, the rapacious action in the hinterlands and all that, taking resource away and creating a wasteland around cities and all that. But the point is, if already, let's say, the United States has 3% rural population, and it is said that in South Asia by 2030 or 2040, we're going to have 80% of our population in cities. Now, if that is a fact, it means that this is a major environmental, social problem that we have no idea how we're going to handle.